research is important. And I believe the all the way from the president to the provost and hopefully myself, what we're signaling is that we're not going to let up on the gas.
Right.
But we're going to do it responsibly. We're going to do it thoughtfully, because nothing will give me greater satisfaction than seeing our faculty get the next big grant, make the next big publication, or maybe secure a patent that allows them to transform their discovery into a community impactful solution.
Dr. Singh, thank you so much for joining us for the Loyola interview series. It's really a pleasure to have you here with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So to get to the role that you're in, it can't be without doing your own research. And I know that you've done some groundbreaking research on stroke recovery, and would love to know a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah. So my background is, and for most of my career, if not all my career, I've been trying to understand why women have a higher prevalence of Alzheimer's disease and why do women have a worse outcome with stroke. And we focused on an important part of the biology of females, and that is the menopause, to recognize that men don't have anything comparable to it. Where you see a dramatic reduction in at least two major hormones that by convention or historically have been really relegated as those hormones tied to reproductive function. But in fact, these hormones like estrogen and progesterone, for example, they do far more than just regulate reproductive biology. They have important effects on the bone, they have important effects on the heart, they have important effects on the brain. And so early on, and I'm going back to the late 80s, early 90s, we asked ourselves kind of a simple question. Is it possible that these hormones, knowing that they have important effects on the brain, that the loss of these hormones puts the brain at risk, makes them vulnerable? And so in that process, we started asking the question, could hormones like estrogen, like progesterone, be therapeutic candidates to help mitigate, for some women, the risk of Alzheimer's disease or improve cognitive function in those that had compromised cognitive capabilities, or improve outcome with stroke. Fast forward about 3 decades, indeed, estrogen and progesterone have shown to have had lots of positive impacts, but it's not without its nuance.
Sure.
And so we've been trying to better understand, why is it that some women respond favorably to an intervention and others don't? And it's kind of the classical tale of most clinical trials. Invariably, you'll find after you do a particular clinical trial, you'll find those that responded favorably to the intervention, those that didn't respond at all, and then perhaps a small percentage that responded adversely. And unfortunately, the history of clinical trials is that if you don't get a significant number of people responding the way they should or you think they should, the field kind of dies a horrible death. And let me kind of put an extreme example in place. Let's say only 5% of the people you studied responded favorably to drug X. Well, the other 95% didn't. And so the trial is deemed a failure. And that development of that, whatever that drug was, kind of comes to a grinding halt. But the provocative notion is that it wasn't a failure for that 5%. And what was it about the biology of those individuals that might have predicted a favorable response? That's kind of the area that we've been spending much more time on. So my research in the space of cognitive aging or Alzheimer's disease or stroke has been really trying to understand what are the best ways to mitigate the consequences of having a stroke, for example. And among the things that we have published over the years and relatively recently even patented is the ability to set the stage so that a hormone like progesterone can have the best likelihood of a positive outcome. So understanding what predicts a response to a drug maybe even using that information to predict disease, but then maybe manipulating that in a manner that allows that particular intervention to go from maybe being neutral in terms of its effect to being positive and protective. So that's part and parcel, but basically trying to understand some fundamental questions of aging. And particularly cognitive aging. I'm an above the neck kind of guy. So I spent my career trying to understand why the brain changes the way it does. Why is there a sex difference? And could hormones and the changes that happen in the body as it relates to the level and pattern that the hormones are being made by the body, could that influence the trajectory of aging? And is that why we have 2 to 3-fold higher prevalence of Alzheimer's disease in women than men? So these are some of the things that we've been trying to spend. But again, I've benefited throughout my career with that ability to walk into colleagues' office, people far smarter than myself, and bounce ideas off them. And we solve the problem together. And I think I see that here as well. And I truly appreciate now, in more so on the administrative side, the really good fortune I have to be able to share ideas and thoughts about improving Loyola from an administrative perspective. How can we manage the bureaucratic burden associated with research that seems to be ever growing? Some of the things we can control, many things we cannot, because they're imposed on us by federal rule of law or state law and things like that. We just got to deal with it. But how do we kind of ensure that the faculty and their staff and their students have sufficient time to be creative and innovative, and also to create a little bit of space? This is particularly important to me. How do we pursue not only the so-called safe science, but how do we create a niche to allow faculty to spend at least a part of their portfolio on the proverbial swinging for the fences? And here's the important part: to make sure that we, as administrators and leaders, ensure that the price of failure in the event that that swing for the fence didn't quite get it over the fence is not going to be met with punishment.
You don't know until you try sometimes.
Correct. And we don't want to create an environment and a culture where people feel fundamentally afraid to make that effort, because I think society and the challenges that we see across various disciplines and various types of challenges that our faculty are trying to address, I think we need to do that for them.
Yeah. I think that is a wonderful outlook. There are so many people, I'm sure, that don't take the risks because they're afraid of what will happen if someone interprets it as failure. So I personally appreciate the way that we look at that at Loyola. And I'll say, as someone who has had family members who have suffered from Alzheimer's and have experienced strokes, I personally thank you for the work that you're doing. So thinking big picture Loyola, I'm sure we have some top research projects that we're working on. If you had to think about the top 2 or 3 research projects that are currently happening, and it may be hard to narrow it down, what are some of those that come to mind?
Boy, that's a tough question. That's almost like asking me to pick my favorite kid.
You could do that too if you'd like.
I think that there are so many really good and impactful programs of research ongoing in the healthcare space, in the education space, in cybersecurity. We have some strength that's emerging, and I'll apologize up front to anyone who watches this video that it's again impossible to acknowledge the full breadth and spectrum of really outstanding research that's being conducted. But maybe I'll offer an answer to the question in this way. I think with very few exception, and I purposefully use that phrase because if I say absolutely, someone will point out an exception to the rule and well, yeah, of course. But I think with rare exception, almost every research project that's ongoing is addressing some form of disparity. Whether it's a health disparity, whether it's a socioeconomic disparity, whether it's an access disparity, we have people who are training counselors on how to deal with people from different ethnic backgrounds. We have people tackling diseases that we know are affecting men and women differently, African Americans versus Hispanics, Latinx versus Caucasians. We know that the diseases affect them differently. Trying to tackle a better understanding of it so that we can then move from understanding the problem to devising solutions and then testing those solutions to see what works here versus there, to recognize that context is so important. And disparity research at its core is addressing those kinds of things. We have a major collaboration through an endeavor called the Institute for Translational Medicine that has as part of its core addressing some of these very disparities. We've got people addressing very high-tech kind of issues related to the security of our data and our processes through some innovative cybersecurity programs. And I mean to go beyond just the curricular or the educational programs, but in point of fact, research programs that are part and parcel of the training of this next generation of cybersecurity experts. We've got people who are tackling potential disparities in how people experience the legal system. So again, I'm hitting lots of different things, and again, my apologies to those that I haven't, called out specifically. But I think one of the great differentiators or strengths, perhaps, that Loyola can be proud of is being very much aligned with its mission, with its values, with the apostolic preferences, and really serving the community by coming up with solutions to these complex challenges, whether it's in the healthcare framework, whether it's in educational framework, or what have you.
Yeah, I can completely see why this is a difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
And I think if we were to talk about all the incredible research going on at Loyola, we'd probably be here all month, or maybe into the warmer weather, which I'd be okay staying in this room until the weather got warmer.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit in time. And could you share a little bit about your background and what drew you to this role at Loyola?
So at my core, I'm a researcher. I'm an educator. I've been doing this for quite a long time. Over the course of my professional journey, I've had the privilege of serving in administrative roles while also serving as a active researcher and educator. As I sort of shared earlier, I'm both literally and figuratively, I suppose, an aging neuroscientist. And that's where I've spent my career, both on the education side and on the research side. Along the way, opportunities were presented to me, and I decided to throw my name in the hat, as it were. And I had the opportunity to serve as a chair for many years. In the past, I served as a dean for many years, and I served as a director of an institute for discovery. I saw this opportunity that I came across as a very interesting opportunity. Admittedly, I came in as the vice dean of research in the Stritch School of Medicine. So I applied for that position, recognizing that, wow, this is a bunch of very capable, competent researchers and educators, faculty doing some pretty cool stuff. We're connected with, currently through affiliation, with a hospital system. What a grand opportunity. Maybe I could leverage some of the things I've learned and apply it here so I can help the faculty here and the university as a whole move even further beyond where that achieved. And that's not to say that I have the answers to all the problems or have the experiences necessary to have all the answers.
Right.
But I like being in an environment where there can be realized a collaborative approach to challenging, to addressing the big challenges that we have before us. So that's kind of my personal journey as a researcher, an educator, an administrator. And I got to a point in my life where My wife asked me one day, "Hey, do you want to retire in Texas?" And I kind of scratched my head and I said, "I don't know that I ever thought about it." And she said,
retirement or Texas?
Yeah, well, either, frankly. I said, I don't know. And for personal reasons, my daughter was still kind of young at the age. We kind of agreed that, well, if I do make a transition, it should be before she gets into high school.
Mm-hmm.
And serendipity, fate, what have you, brought me to this opportunity. I applied. I liked what I saw. I liked the people that were here. I appreciated the anchor that Loyola has. Many universities, I think, struggle with reinventing themselves, having to reinvent themselves in some ways. Loyola has a distinct advantage in terms of how strongly it's anchored to its Jesuit mission. And as you can perhaps tell, I'm not a Jesuit, but
I'm not either,
and I'm not a Catholic. And so I say that to offer this perspective that even when I interviewed here, one of the questions that was posed to me was, well, what do you think about joining a Jesuit Catholic institution? And I shared that, I don't mean to come across as having studied the Jesuit tradition with great depth, but I did do a little bit of research. I did do my homework, as it were. And what I couldn't help appreciate was how similar the core facilities, core tenets, the core system of belief was with my own faith.
Absolutely.
And
I felt the same way and feel the same way.
I feel that, if we spend more time focused on how we're similar rather than how we're different, and now I start to get a little philosophical, that perhaps the world could be a better place,
100%.
or a different place at least. So I guess all that to say that things like serving the community, I really see as resonating. And I see that research is a really powerful vehicle by which we serve the community. Research is also an investment. A university has to be deliberate in its desire to help faculty realize their creative and innovative ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a commitment that Loyola has, and I believe in my heart of hearts is committed to growing, because it's not just about the financial ROI that's associated with research, that is to say grants and patents, contracts, whatnot. It's also about the reputational ROI that research brings, that reputational cachet. Hopefully, if we do it right through these kinds of venues, through other storytelling mechanisms, our alumni, our community realizes the cool things that are going on and say to themselves, I want to be part of that.
Yeah. It creates pride. It creates more affinity.
And I think, again, coming back to this spirit of we do this together, and to realize that we need to find ways to help realize our faculty's ideas and innovations, because they're the ones that are going to help us address these complex issues.
Yeah.
We can't do everything for everyone, and that's why we try to be strategic about that very process. So that whole ideation that I just shared with you, I think is what has helped me learn about successful organizations in my past. I've seen good practices, I've seen not so great practices, and I want to share my own experiences with Loyola, not just in those endeavors that I felt led to something good, but especially those endeavors that I tried and didn't turn out so great. Because I feel we can learn so much from our missteps.
Absolutely.
Just as much as we can learn from the wonderful successes that we've had. So trying to do as much as I can to bring people together, smart people together, so that we realize that we're more than the sum of our individual parts is really what I think I've tried to do. And I think some of my past experience has helped me do. And always at the top of the list is to realize that there's so many smart people, and you gotta try to find ways to bring them together to find the value of working together.
100%. And being able to start your time at Loyola at Stritch, there's no shortage of that talent, where we have a medical school where 1 out of every 4 applicants applies to our Stritch School of Medicine. Yep. And I heard just recently we had a student score a perfect score on the MCAT. There's no shortage of talent that recognize the training, the professional formation that is part and parcel of their education when they come to Loyola. To say nothing of the experiential learning that they can gain through research. Yeah.
So I think those are important things that, and then as it relates to the challenges that lie ahead, we recognize that, enrollment may or may not remain the same for Loyola. But, one of the things that can potentially help us is to recognize that the reputational enhancement that I talked about that research can afford allows more students to get attracted to Loyola. Because more and more students, even at the undergraduate level, appear to be seeking experiential learning opportunities.
Yep.
And one of the most significant and powerful experiential learning opportunities that we can offer our students, undergraduates and others, is research.
100%.
Yep.
This is very exciting to hear all of this. A couple more questions.
Sure.
And I imagine this question may also be a challenging one because there's probably going to be many. But as you've stepped into this position, what are some of your immediate priorities?
I think some of the immediate priorities include finding a way to best tell our story, to highlight, herald our successes.
Yes.
That's why. Because I think we have lots of cool stuff going on, but we are a complex organization, and then it's not always easy to get everyone to be aware and celebrate the successes that we all have. I think that helps motivate. Being able to celebrate each and everyone's success along the way to the best of our ability, and reminding them of how they're part of something greater, if not great.
Yes.
And it's like the old tale of the janitor interviewed at NASA.
Yeah. I know this story.
When, asked the question, what do you do here? Mm-hmm. Fully expecting an answer like, I keep the floors spick and span. The gentleman responded by saying, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, that I'm helping to send a man to the moon.
Mm-hmm. Everybody plays an important role.
The goal, I think, is to help work with various teams: marketing, communication, development, leadership teams, the deans, the rank and file, to help us all appreciate the value proposition of research, the impact it has not only to their own personal success, but to society as a whole. So that's an important priority. And the mechanics of that are not trivial and will require things. The other is to continue to advocate for investment. I think we have an opportunity to capitalize on the success that we've realized in the last 5 years, for example. We've seen nothing short of a remarkable trajectory in growth, and it's really a product of the faculty.
Yeah.
And the chairs that recruit these faculty, and the deans that create an environment to help support these faculty, and the students we recruit who are bright-eyed and want to be a part of something great, and aligning them with the mission. So again, maybe it's speaking to the same, but all these kinds of things as it relates to research require us to think thoughtfully, carefully about our infrastructure. We can't expect to continue a growth of trajectory with our existent level of investment or infrastructure. And it's a tough thing to do when the challenges are not trivial, the headwinds, as it were, that we see ahead. But I think that's another thing, to try to find ways to tell the story, to advocate for the investment. Those are two key priorities. The third is in that same vein of investment, I guess. It's to help us realize the best way by which we foster the collaboration, even among administrative units. The right staffing, all those kinds of things. We have an opportunity. We're on the precipice of being announced as an R1 institution. That's not to say that we're going to all of a sudden convert all our dollars into investment to research and shirk the important investment we need in the educational mission, the service mission. No, but to really realize and become the best version of ourselves.
That's wonderful.
With the resources that we have, but to continue to be an advocate for what the faculty can realize.
Yeah.
I'll give you one small example. The return that we have on our pilot seed grant programs is nothing short of remarkable. I'll pick one in particular, but it's an example that's consistent with other pilot seed programs at Loyola. In the School of Medicine, we have a roughly 6.5 to 1 return on investment. That's purely financial return on investment. And, I like to say, if I were one stockbroker, if I gave you $1, if you gave me $1 and I gave you 6.5 in return, maybe that's a good place to see.
I'll give you $20 right now if you'll do that.
Where we can double down, right? But I get it. We've got lots of priorities, but we do this together.
Right.
It is to understand and respect the competing priorities, to advocate for swinging for the fences when we can, and being true to the mission.
Yeah.
I think those are part and parcel of the recipe that I think is going to help us go beyond where we've come already. So priorities, advancing principles of investment, clarifying and fostering good messages about what we do, good storytelling.
Yeah.
About the wonderful things that we do. Because I think there's a lot of people, but I apologize here, I'm rambling a little bit, but let me frame it this way. I would love for people who drive down Sheridan Avenue or people who drive down First Avenue, that when they look across their shoulder and they see this wonderful complex of buildings that represent our campuses, that they say to themselves that this is not only where people get outstanding education, but it's also where cutting-edge research lives.
Absolutely.
And that cutting-edge research is devoted to solving the complex problems that face our society.
So you mentioned becoming an R1 institution, and I'm just curious, in your work and conversations with university leadership like President Reed or Provost Woods, what is the importance of becoming an R1 institution, and what should that mean to our alumni and to our students?
Yeah, I think it's a great accolade to be in the company of many outstanding institutions to be designated as an R1. But chasing a ranking is not what I think we're about. Research is fundamentally and unequivocally important for Loyola. Research is something that we will continue to work to develop in collaboration with Provost Woods, with President Reed, et cetera, and to continue to become the best possible versions of ourselves, to capitalize on opportunities, to be strategic in how we capitalize on those opportunities, to recognize that we may have grand aspirations, but we also have to recognize the bigger picture of what we can and can't accomplish in a given year, in a given couple of years, and so on. I will continue to be a staunch advocate for research, and I am very pleased to share with you that advocacy has been very well met in kind when I've had conversations with Provost Woods, and I've heard President Reed talk about the importance of research. Traditionally, if you look at what many people talk about, the three legs of the academic stool, research is one of them. The other two being education and service. And so research is an important part of who we are. It's an important reputation enhancer. It's an important way by which we establish a brand. And we create the foundation of principles and values on which we develop this innovation. And all the way encouraging our faculty to meet the elements of our overall goal. So it's a long-winded way of saying we are excited about being an R1 institution. We want to live up to the reputation associated with being an R1 institution, but we're going to do it in a thoughtful, meaningful way. I do believe in the Hippocratic principle of first doing no harm. So as we go forward, we cannot undermine those areas that have been successful. We cannot pursue research at the expense of something else that's been very successful in the foundation of Loyola. But what we can do is create new opportunities and new means by which we really enhance our investment in research, our support for research, our storytelling for research, because all those things help our faculty, our staff, students develop a sense of pride and develop an alignment of mission that we're here to educate the next generation of researchers and professionals. And through that education, we're affording research opportunities that solve important problems. We're not just giving them experiential opportunities for the sake of learning the research methodology. We're giving them research experience as part of an important process by which we're tackling these tough problems, challenges that the nation, the world is trying to address. And so research is important. And I believe the all the way from the president to the provost and hopefully myself, what we're signaling is that we're not going to let up on the gas.
Right.
But we're going to do it responsibly. We're going to do it thoughtfully, because nothing will give me greater satisfaction than seeing our faculty get the next big grant, make the next big publication, or maybe secure a patent that allows them to transform their discovery into a community impactful solution. And that's to include research that is community engaged, research that's intended about not only stopping at the point of discovery of a new drug or a new educational model, but actually implementing it, getting people to adopt it, the so-called implementation science, another important avenue of research that the university pursues. So all those things are important. But my job is to help university leadership through this conversation allow our alumni to appreciate the great stuff that's going on, through working with the marketing folks, the development folks, the community to appreciate where we are situated in terms of our contribution to national, global, local solutions. All those things are, I think, what I think are being signaled clearly as the direction we want to go. And together with Provost Woods and President Reed and his team, I'm eager and excited to help shape the future investment portfolio and hopefully be a piece of Loyola's journey to greater prominence in research.
Well, I could definitely sense that excitement. And as I listen to all of the answers to these questions, it also just keeps coming back to me that all of this will benefit and enhance the student experience. And that's a wonderful thing.
Completely agree.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, Dr. Singh, and just seeing and hearing the work that you're doing. I'm so excited about the future of Loyola.
Well, pleasure's all mine. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed the conversation.